Bizarre Brain Comics. Cherry. Hello, this is Gary for Bizarre Brain Comics. This is where I like to take a look at some older comics. Talk a little bit about the characters and the creators, and then examine the stories and the art. And today, do something a little different. I've covered some underground comics before, and that's what this is, despite of how it actually looks. This, we're going to look at some stuff of Cherry. This comic book Cherry from the 80s and early 90s. He doesn't want to stay lit. And as I said, this is an underground comic. There's humor and other stuff. Now we'll take a look inside the big book of knowledge and see what that has to say. And this is Cherry. This is an underground erotic comic book about the sexual adventures and fantasies of a recently adult young lady, Cherry, and her friends. Again, this Archie Comics inspired series was published by Last Gasp and created by Larry Wells, and ran for a total of 23 issues from 82 to 2019. I haven't seen any of the more recent things. The title bore the original title of Cherry Pop-Tart, but was shortened to just Cherry with number 3 in response to possible litigation from Kellogg's, who hold the copyright to the term Pop-Tart. In the stories, her last name was changed from Pop-Tart to Pop Star. Although the title is of an erotic nature, it does sometimes include political and pop culture commentary, and has been in free speech and censorship awareness. And the creator is Larry Wells, born in 1948. He's an American cartoonist and an early contributor to the San Francisco underground comics of the 60s and 70s. And after having his work appear in many underground books, his Cherry character became his most successful creation. And he has had many collaborations with well-known artists and writers such as Mark Baudet and Neil Gaiman, or Gaiman, however you want to pronounce his name. Yep. And so, because there's so much stuff in here that is sexually explicit, there's a warning, and I'm going to avoid the explicit stuff, but just as a general warning, that it's still as sexual and as sexuality in the artwork and in the stories as well. But I'm not going to break down the story like I usually do. I'll just kind of do a little bit of an overview of the material. Okay. So let us go join with Cherry in her wild adventures. Okay, and here is Cherry. And as you can see here from this cover, and from all of the covers of these, I've got some more somewhere. I do actually have the first issue. This, while they were mostly published by Last Gasp, some were published by Kitchen Sink. You can see here. And you can clearly see that this young lady, the perennial 18-year-old, the artwork is done by, or in, an Archie-like stylization, which is fine. And it is an Archie parody. And this was very apparent in the first issue, which I used to have, I should still have somewhere, in which obvious parodies of some of the Archie characters take place or are present in the story. And so, as you can see, it's Archie-like, Archie style, just more sexy. And it's similar to, now, from two little factoids that may only be apocryphal, may not be correct. I have heard that Larry Wells, the artist here, after his Cherry became popular, I have heard that he was offered a job at Archie Comics, doing their regular Archie characters and stories, which is quite possible. He is a thoroughly skilled artist, but he didn't want to have to tone down the sexuality of his characters. And I have also heard that that shortly after the Cherry comic debuted, within a few, 2 or 3 issues or so, the character Cheryl Blossom first appeared in Archie Comics, and that she was somewhat inspired by Cherry. The name alone should be close enough. You know, Cherry and Cheryl. Cherry could easily be short for Cheryl, and although Cheryl Blossom is a fiery redhead, we see in the colors here that Cherry is a bit of a honey to strawberry blonde. So she's a blonde with a little bit of red in her hair. Not so much there. And this issue here, she's not even on the cover. This is her friend Ellie, I think she is. She's a real brainy one. And this is Ellie in the Land of Oz. It is a parody of the Wizard of Oz. And they do have, see, she has regular adventures. She talks about stuff. And then they have little fantasy adventures, like here, this one with the Wizard of Oz. And in here they have actually a story with Bigfoot, and I'll show you some of it. A story with Bigfoot, and that turns into a parody of King Kong. And ends up with I'll show you the back cover here. And this is really, really nicely done. And of course, this was not not done exclusively by Wells. In this whole book, I think the inking was done by someone else called what was his name, Larry Todd. And because this is a parody of, I'm not even going to mention it, of a comic book and animated show from the 80s. Cenozoic Tales, also known as Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, except this is motorcycles and dinosaurs. And that's some really nice work on that. Both the coloring, the penciling, and the inking. And I think here later on he had inking assist. Larry Wells had inking assist from someone else, because you can see a difference in slight difference in the style of the inking. So we'll take a little look now. We'll take a little look into the pages of Cherry and let you see some of the artwork, interior artwork. Okay, this isn't so bad. You can see here that they even had Cherry even had some sponsored some sexy clothes. You get hot Cherry fashions, soft and sassy. And here's the first story in here, and you can see some nice, cute figure work, decent backgrounds, and but you can see in that first panel the background was fairly bold and prominent, and then the background, the inking style becomes much looser, which is kind of understandable to make it recede more from the viewer's eye and bring the focus on the main character. It's kind of like focus in a photograph. And clearly Archie inspired. And here Cherry had just gotten home and from work or school or whatever, and turns on the soap opera that she likes, and she starts undressing as she's watching the show, and after that I can't show it. As she's watching the soap opera. But again, here you can see in this particular panel, for example, the backgrounds are sharper, but sometimes they're just a little bit off. It's just looser. I think it's a design choice, and there's nothing wrong with it. It would work better with color, perhaps, because it wouldn't look so almost like afterthought. And then here we have another story. Now, most of Cherry's stories are just little incidents, little stories, not unlike Archie stories, except it goes to drugs and sex. But here we have Cherry is being interviewed for a job, and as she's telling about previous job, and flashes back here. Now this is where some of the political commentary and kind of comes into it, because here's a character who is a parody of Oliver North. He was a major prominent political figure in the 1980s. And here's a couple more panels. It's still in the flashback, and still dealing with Oliver North, but I can't show you most of it because I want this to be able to be kid friendly, so that you can see the artwork and appreciate the artwork without having to be, of an adult nature. And here we actually have 2 pages in a row that is actually functional. I mean, that I don't have to cover anything up on. And it's more, but you can see, this is, I think he was supposed to be, Reverend. He's supposed to be a parody, I think, of Jerry Falwell, who is now long gone, as is Ollie North from the other part. Then we move on to a segment with another parody of another preacher from the PTL Club. I suddenly can't think of his name. I know it so well because he's still very prominent, and sexual escapades with her as well. With him, I mean. And here we have another issue. And this is right in the middle somewhere, with stuff that's not too bad if I just cover up a little bit. And you can clearly see this character is very Archie-ish, with Cherry coming in. Nice, good expression work. The faces. The characters are well designed, well represented. And here's some more from that same story. The same character. No Cherry involved in this page at all, but I have to cover up the opposite page. But it's downright cute. You see the functional linear perspective where it's needed. Decent, although loose, detail in the backgrounds. And it works well. And then this is, I think, is a nice piece, a parody of Aphrodite rising from the spray, from the mist, or from the ocean. I forgot the title of it. Famous painting. And you'd think I would know. I only studied that stuff with Cherry as the main part, but there's surprisingly nothing too risque that can't be shown. And now we'll take a look at this one. This is the one with the motorcycle theme. And this story is Cherry out in the woods. And now you take an example here. Look here that this is several issues later. This is from '93. So the art style has matured somewhat. Some denser blacks. But I think this is largely due to the Larry Todd, who I think is inking it. And much more detail in the backgrounds. Of course, here here you can see the background inking is still slightly loose, although tighter than before. That's to really bring the main stuff forward. And then you can see over here, this is the thing about censorship and legal defense fund. And this is some good storytelling here, panel-to-panel storytelling, because you see them clear over on the right side of this panel, correction, on the left side of this panel, going through riding through an industrial area. A nice detail in the motorcycle, and detail in the backgrounds, and then you see through an agricultural area, and they're farther across the panel, and then farther across the panel still, and they're out in the woods. And the whole story is about being out in the woods. She's riding with her boyfriend. Well, he is slightly more realistic and detailed than the other figures are too, but Cherry still maintains her Archie stylization. And some really nice artwork here. See some nice, sharp, crisp detail for the background. You can read it very well, and just the way it's presented here, it tells the story very well. Good panel-to-panel storytelling. And here's a later page in the story. Again, this doesn't even have Cherry in it, but you can see some of the slightly more realistic interpretation of the characters, and detail in the backgrounds in the machinery, the sound effects. It's good storytelling. This is when they're out in the woods and Cherry's been snatched up by Bigfoot. And this is where it becomes a King Kong parody, because they're going out in the woods to find her. And here as well, although she's nude, you can't see any details. So you can see the Bigfoot is carrying her, but through the woods, and you see this logging camp. And here's no, already had the logging camp. This is the crazy religious cult in their compound, and Bigfoot and Cherry are being chased by motorcycle nuts and crazy hippie nuts, and now they're coming to the cult nuts, but it tells the story. It moves the story along well. The detail, it's just overall decent, good storytelling, and it has some really decent humor. And then here again is some more of that kind of stuff. This guy here who's now is part of the like a militia nut out in the woods, and the Bigfoot is still carrying Cherry, and he's about to get blasted and being followed by helicopters, and the Bigfoot is being scared crazy, and so is Cherry. She'd rather be with Bigfoot, really. And so it shows that without the sexual stuff, this could could be done as a almost as a kind of as an Archie type story. And here you can see in the back there is an ad where you can order a cherry beach towel. So she had had a lot of merchandise. She sold clothing and here beach towel, and I guess you can get posters as well. And then we got that nice back cover again. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it here. I get a kick out of the stories. They are funny, and even the sex is done in humor. And all these parodies. It was getting too long, so I didn't get to this one, but that's okay. It's just more of the same. But it's a fun comic. And if you can find them when you're old enough, I recommend getting at least a couple comics. Because it's all good, not so clean fun. So, thank you for joining me with Cherry. And please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment, if you will. And remember, comics are art.